My name is Vince Lombardi. I want to welcome you to the Green Bay Packers.
The game is over, so it's time to sit back and react. You've heard from the coaches.
Certainly appreciate all of our guys on this football team.
The players.
You know, I told the team earlier, it's going to be a 2-chin strap game.
And the pundits.
You show us that you have the inner drive. Believe me, you will be a Packer.
This is the Green and Gold Monday Morning Quarterback on WTMJ.
I think I want to call this one, Brandon Sneide, The Last Dance, because this is the last time you and I are going to talk about Packers 2024 and into 2025 this season. It all ended on a field in Philadelphia. A game started horrifically for the Packers. Nixon fumbles, or did he? We'll probably get to that at some point. A game not well played by one side of the ball, and I think that's going to be my focus through some of this. The offense, Matt LaFleur, I think, are the sort of the where I'm going to put my scorn on the results of this game. Defense, playing a really tough team, and with a great running back who arguably is top 3 and maybe the top guy in the NFL. Derrick Henry might argue with that, but it was a one-sided game because only the defense showed up yesterday in Philadelphia.
Yeah, you mentioned the start of that game, Steve, the Keyshawn Nixon. Did he fumble? Did he not fumble? I'm not a big, blame the officials guy, but it felt like the energy of what we saw was kind of sucked out of the Packers. It took them a little while to kind of shake off what had just happened. I still don't understand how they ruled it that the Philadelphia Eagles came away with the ball. They didn't even come away with the ball out of the pile. The Packers did. There was, images where Fox captured Keyshawn Nixon with 2 arms around the ball. I don't, for the life of me, understand how that happened. But you, as a team that was in the playoffs last year, you gotta be able to get hit in the chin and kind of bounce back. And they failed to do that yesterday. And for me, it falls squarely on the shoulders of head coach Matt LaFleur and quarterback Jordan Love. Jordan Love was 20 of 33 for 212 yards. He had 3 horrendous interceptions. I mean, the last one was kind of a whatever. Heave into the end zone, which you could also make the argument there was pass interference on that play. But again, it kind of was. The game was pretty much out of range at that point. But they were never able to marry the passing game with the running game all year long.
That's been the theme, right? They just couldn't figure it out how to make that balance work.
I don't understand why. I don't get why. And the only thing that I can come away from, and this is maybe I'm coping here, is that Jordan Love just was never healthy. And there were instances yesterday, Steve, where I'm screaming at the television, run, take off with the ball. Jordan Love, that is. Nobody's open, take off. And he would dump it off to Emmanuel Wilson, who would, behind the line of scrimmage, and it would, be an incomplete pass or a loss for 3 yards. Like, he just wouldn't take off. He had one scramble, and he almost got a first down on 3rd and 12. And I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that Brian Bulaga broke it down really well on Green Bay Game Day on ESPN, 94.5 ESPN Milwaukee yesterday, that Josh Jacobs just isn't the type of guy that you can marry play-action pass with the run game, but you at least got to try. They had 3 play-action passes yesterday.
You and I have talked about this. Their inability to sort of get the short passing game going, it's so glaringly obvious because the couple times they did it worked.
Right.
But I watched this team, and I understand that they had, in this game, horrific injuries. Obviously, losing Jenkins early.
It felt like every play.
Yeah, I mean, you lose him, and then I think Glover comes in, and he's got like 3 penalties. And
he gets yanked.
Yeah, and then some another guy that hasn't played that much. So that wasn't a help. But I'm watching this game, and I'm thinking to myself, I love Matt LaFleur as a coach. I think he's a great coach. Mm-hmm. I got into a social media argument last night. People were saying, are you thinking Matt LaFleur is a bad coach? No, he's a great coach. But in these game situations, in playoff games, there are times I wonder, what are you doing here? And I made the comment, and I'm curious what you think. Maybe Matt LaFleur should give up his play calling. Let an OC handle it, whatever you want, however you want to delegate, and just focus on the overall package that's happening on the field in the game. I don't know if that's going to happen or not because Matt LaFleur has a lot of power. I think it would be helpful. And the other coach that I give some scorn on is Rich Bisaccia. He is the highest paid special teams coach. I've yet to see, other than a little bit of a burst from Nixon last year as a kick returner, what is the draw? What is the appeal here other than he's a friend of Matt LaFleur?
Yeah. I think I agree with like 80% of what you said. I completely agree with the Bisaccia. Now, I will say this, like, and again, this kind of still falls on coaching. People were complaining on that Nixon fumble that he took it out of the end zone. Like, okay, he was a yard in the end zone and he took it out. Whoop-de-doo. It's not like he caught it 8 yards deep and then brought it out. So I'm not going to be mad that the player took it out a yard or two into the end zone who wasn't all-pro at that position.
Do you think the game's different if he doesn't fumble and we have a series?
I do. I really do.
I mean, it was the only score in the first half touchdown-wise.
I truly do, because look what the defense did, Steve. You essentially gift-wrapped 7 points to Philly. I mean, they got the ball on the 20-yard line. You know, before the game had an actual first play minus the kickoff, you gift-wrapped them 7 points, and it was 10-0 at halftime. It could have been, actually, I think it was 10-3.
Well, 16-10 in the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Right. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I think it was a big difference, and we've seen this Packer team, when they're able to get out in front of teams, especially teams that run the football, and Philly runs the football exceptionally well. If they were able to, and this is, again, big if, they were able to take that kickoff, not fumble, and go down the field, let's say in 5, 6, 7 minutes, score a touchdown, or even a field goal, I think that changes a lot of things about that game. I agree with the Bisaccia. Special teams has constantly been a thorn in their own side. I will say this. I think Goody, Bisaccia, I don't really know how much you give credit to Bisaccia. They finally figured out the kicker position. Now you hope McManus is back next year, because then we're back into having the conversation of who's going to be the kicker. I think you got to bring him back without a doubt. Pay him whatever the heck he wants, because to be able to put that to bed, that position would be really good.
Do you think they'll do that?
I think they will. I think McManus likes being here. I think he likes that Green Bay gave him a chance after everything that happened, but I don't think Matt LaFleur should give up play calling. Because the best coaches in the NFL, Steve, the three that I like, you think about Matt LaFleur, their offense was still 7th in the NFL this year. Kyle Shanahan. I almost said Mike Shanahan. That was your day. Kyle Shanahan. He doesn't give up play calling. The coach in L.A., Sean McVay. He's not going to give up play calling. Like, these are still elite play calling coaches. Now, do I think that the associate head coach, who is also Rich Bisaccia, should maybe have a more prominent role? And maybe that's just the role that they have?
Might not be a bad idea.
Then we can have a conversation. But I do not think Matt LaFleur should ever think about giving up play calling.
If you think he's a smart coach, and I do agree he's a smart guy, and he's done very well, and all you have to do is look at his record. Playoffs, not so much, but regular season, one of the best all time.
Most wins in the first 6 seasons of a head coach.
So that's not in dispute. And I don't care if it's just regular season, that still matters. That's how you get to the playoffs. You have to earn it, and they've earned it many times under Matt LaFleur in his, 6 years?
Yep.
But when I think about this team and him being as smart as he is as an offensive play caller, why wasn't he, as the way we started this, how come he couldn't figure out their short passing game or how to blend the incredible talent of Jacobs with the rest of the team? At one point, you and I were crowing about how great this receiver core was.
Yeah.
Then Watson went down, then obviously the injuries yesterday. Why couldn't he make that adjustment to his offensive play calling to make it all work together? Or is that a homework assignment for the next year?
Just like players, Steve, and I said this, I got into a lengthy argument with my best friend last night, respectfully. Argument, I should say. We didn't really argue, but we have different opinions. And I said, just like players, sometimes coaches just have bad years. Like, you got to go into the offseason, you got to self-scout, and he's got to learn what, worked for him as a play caller and what didn't work. This was his first year with a running back not named Aaron Jones. And maybe they didn't anticipate Jacobs having their identity changed, Steve. Like, this team's identity changed. I really want to go back to that Week 2 matchup against Tennessee, because I think after Jordan Love went down in that Week 1 against Philly, like, this team had to lean on the run. And then all of a sudden, we all knew Josh Jacobs was great. Like, the Packers went out and got him for a reason. I'll be honest,
I didn't know he was this good.
And maybe the Packers were like, I don't know, like, maybe we can expect 1,000, 1,200 yards, but like, I think he finished the year with 16 or 17 touchdowns, and he was phenomenal.
What I loved about that game yesterday, even though they lost, was America and the world got to see a run by Josh Jacobs that reminded me of Marshawn Lynch.
I was so close. He was so close to getting it. I knew watching it live, I was like, I don't think he got in. Yeah. They ruled him in because that was the right thing to do.
But it was a great display of a great talent. And I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, Packers fans appreciate what he did this year. He's a top 5 running back in the NFL. in a new year, on a new team after spending all that time in Las Vegas for the Raiders, I was so impressed, and I love the way. And this is something I think is a carryover to next year. The way he approached it, he's disappointed, he's mad, he used some cuss words, but I love the fact that he is going to be one of those leaders going forward on this team.
And it's not only that too, but I think it goes to you got to give a little credit to Goody for going out and finding the right fits. Like those were the right fits.
Well, he hit home runs. Jacobs and McKinney, come on.
Yeah, I mean they were your two best players all year long, and you hope maybe this year.
Can he do it again this year?
They got $63 million in cap space this year. I'll say this about Jacobs. We'll put a bow on Jacobs. 5th best season as a Packer running back. And there have been some really
Hall
good
of Famers.
Really, really, really good running backs to come through Green Bay. So 5th best overall rushing season.
In his first year.
In his first year. So I think part of that too, though, to go back to your question, Steve, you kind of answered it in your question. What receiver popped out this year? You and I think talked about it a week or two ago. Only 2 receivers went over 100 yards in one game.
Watson and
Reed. Reed week 1 and Watson a few times in the middle of the year. One against the Bears, and one of them was like a 75-yard catch and run. So, none of the receivers regressed. And we had talked about, most Packer fans, most shows, most pundits had described this unit as being like a really deep core of talent. And I think it is, but they all took a half step back.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is the right term, but it's poverty of riches. You have all this talent, but only one guy can catch the ball. Yeah. And when you have that many receivers, I don't know there's going to be a standout. Obviously, Christian Watson had some injury problems again. He is a tremendous talent. I'm not denying that, but you got to stay on the field. I'm not sure next year, and this sort of plays into how I want to sort of move the conversation on the podcast. I think they need to find a number 1 receiver. Now, there's a name out there that we all know very well. I think they can actually afford him. Do you remember the connection with him? I think I know who you're talking about. Number 5 for the Cincinnati Bengals, T. Higgins. Yeah.
Do you remember the connection with him in the 2020 draft?
No.
Every Packer fan wanted to pick him instead of Jordan Love.
Would that be a good investment for the Packers?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I think if you're looking at this team going into next year where they kind of were – look, it was a healthier Packers team, but Watson missed obviously a big chunk the last few weeks of the year with the torn ACL. Jaden Reed was banged up kind of all year. Romeo Doubs with a concussion missed a handful of games. Jordan Love, I don't think was healthy, and I think at some point, Steve, in February, we're going to see a report from Schefter or Ian Rappaport like Jordan Love had a procedure to clean up X, Y, and Z, because I don't think. The elbow wasn't healthy. I know he said he's not blaming any injuries, so credit to him. But the elbow wasn't healthy. He tore his MCL in his knee, and he had a groin injury. I mean, as a quarterback, and you've heard Aaron Rodgers talk about it, you build from the ground up. When you don't have a good knee and you have a bad groin in your elbow, it doesn't bode well. So I'm just going to chalk this year up as, I put this out on Twitter. If you going into this season, and I'm not attacking you because I don't know what your opinion was going into this season. If you picked the Packers to go to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl, you were wrong. This was never a team.
A lot of famous football experts
because they were an exciting team to watch in the playoffs last year. They were a few plays away from the NFC Championship game, and maybe they would have beat Detroit. Who knows? But it was never going to happen. There was you lost Aaron Jones, you had Josh Jacobs. We didn't know what that was going to look like. We didn't know what this receiver core was going to step into the next role. Half of these guys are in their sophomore year. They had that sophomore slump that you hear a lot about. They dealt with injuries, especially in the offensive line. The first-round draft pick, Jordan Morgan, goes down with a shoulder injury in training camp, has never been really consistent enough. Marshawn Lloyd, their third-round draft pick, didn't play all year long. Amari Cooper. What's his first name? Cooper, the linebacker.
Edgerrin Cooper.
Amari Cooper is the receiver. Edgerrin Cooper, a stud, but they discovered him late in the year because in training camp he was hurt.
That's a bright spot for next year.
And that was a bright spot. Woo. So I never had the expectations like this is Super Bowl or bust. To me, it starts next year. That championship window begins to open next year because it's the third year of Jordan Love starting. And a lot of these receivers are also married with that third year as well with Jordan Love.
All right, let's wrap it this way. It's not a tragedy, but it's a disappointment. It's always sad when you lose a playoff game.
It is.
But let's be honest. Half the teams don't make the playoffs, so we have been consistently in
and
the
only
playoffs.
one team wins the Super Bowl.
True.
I heard a lot of people talking about that yesterday. Oh, you got to fire X, Y, and Z because so does 31 other teams have to fire a head coach because they didn't win a Super Bowl?
I'm going to go forward thinking none of the coaches are going to change. If that's the case, we'll see what happens. But going into the offseason, what are the needs for this team? How would you spend the $64 million if they do spend it?
I would start at receiver. I would try to get now. The free agency list is kind of blah this year. Like, it's really good at the very top, and then when you get to that next level, it like a Six Flags roller coaster. It just goes screaming down. I would start at receiver, Steve. T. Higgins is going to be on everybody's
How about Devontae Adams?
wish list. I wouldn't mind Devontae Adams
I think he would like to come back
in a 1 or 2 year deal to kind of take a little pressure, because this is what I think is going to happen. If you're able to get a Devontae or a T. Higgins and bring them into this offense, it takes the pressure off of guys like Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, eventually Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. Hopefully Romeo's okay. And they don't have to be a receiver that they're not supposed to be. They're not number ones, and that's okay, but you need that alpha number one. I think it's a receiver, and then I transition right to defensive line and edge, because Philly blitzed Green Bay yesterday one time, and they got to Jordan Love probably 12 times. By four-man rush. They've invested into their front four, and I would love to see Green Bay do the same. Devontae Wyatt went out yesterday, which is the Packers' best interior lineman, so that was another injury that kind of went under the rug that not a lot of people are talking about. But I would go receiver, defensive line, and cornerback.
Jair on this team next year?
I think he is. Because when you cut him, you only save $6.8 million.
So they're going to see what happens.
I think they're going to let that contract ride out. I don't know what his age is. I think he's 28. So he'll go into free agency at 29.
When he's healthy, he's one of the best.
When he's healthy, he's one of the best. And that's the other disappointing part of the year, Steve, because he didn't like Joe Barry. He made it very well known that he didn't like Joe Barry. He liked Jeff Hafley. He was excited to be in this defense, and he was playing really good football. And just injuries, again, it's just unfortunate.
All right, last thing in the podcast for this season, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
My pick right now, it was before the playoff, or as the playoffs were getting ready to start. I hate to say it, but I think it's going to be the Lions out of the NFC versus the Bills. I just think the Lions, I don't know, man. Every time I think that I doubt them, they seem to just get right back up and punch me back in the face.
Great minds. Same for me.
Yeah.
Bills, Lions. And I might take the Lions in that.
I might take the Lions. The Bills are fun. The Bills do it with not a lot of superstars.
Yeah.
That's what's fun.
Well, they got one of the biggest superstars.
Outside of Josh Allen, like they're doing it the right way. So they're fun to watch in their fan base. You talk about a fan base that needs a Super Bowl. Well, I guess both, but
yeah,
that's what would be exciting for me.
It's a great story. That's sort of what the Super Bowl should be about.
Exactly.
Brandon Sneide, big-time producer, sports guy. Always a pleasure to talk to you. I've enjoyed the podcast this year. We'll do it again next year if you're interested.
Yep.
Maybe sponsoring the podcast. Just reach out to WTMJ. We'd love to have a podcast sponsor on the Monday Morning Quarterback. It has been a pleasure. It's been a fun season. We made the playoffs. Ask the folks in Chicago how that feels, because they haven't made it in a while.
Win or lose, it's been a pleasure all year to sit here and talk football with you, Steve. I appreciate you for asking me to jump on this, and thank you for everybody that's taken the time to listen to the show. We appreciate it. And again, the Packers will be back. The draft coming in Green Bay. We got free agency in a few months. Maybe we'll get together later on this spring and talk some free agency, some draft prospects.
Maybe a draft podcast.
All maybe right. From Green Bay.
There you go.
You got the hookup.
You sell it to the bosses. I'll be there. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Monday Morning Quarterback, Brandon Sneide, Steve Scaffidi. You can find us on WTMJ.com or wherever you find your podcast. Thanks for listening all season long. Go, Pack, go, even though they're not in the playoffs.